Starting with the name of God, the merciful and the compassionate. To begin, I would like to acknowledge the land on which I reside and the program is being held today. The land is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit of Anishinaabe, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee, and Wendat people, and it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuits, and Métis. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaties signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We are very grateful to the original inhabitants of our land, our brothers and sisters in humanity, for allowing us to exist in this space and host this program today. Thank you. Hello, my name is Rukhsana Syed. I am your MC for the event today. A little bit about me. I serve as the Secretary of the Board of Directors of Ansar Foundation, a Canadian by choice, Alhamdulillah. And I currently work in the tech industry in human resources with focus on equity, inclusion, and belonging. On this, one thing that COVID has really made us very clear for everybody is that we all bleed the same color. And this infection does not differentiate between faiths, races, origins, ethnicities, abilities, and genders. Marginalized communities are impacted by this disease at greater number, including those suffering from poverty, homelessness, low wage, and unemployment. Unemployment is something that, who were not unemployed and are known to be white collar are now unemployed. We are all suffering in one way, shape, or form. And together, we need to figure out how we can get through this pandemic together. Poverty and anguish are a leading cause of mental health, something that may be seen invisible and yet very disabling for people who are facing with these challenges. Since COVID-19 began, fewer Canadians report having good mental health prior to COVID-19. Youth aged 15 to 24 were the least likely to report excellent or very good mental health. They now report the greatest decline, according to Stats Canada, with a percentage drop from 60 pre-COVID to 40. Those are alarming numbers. It's within this sobering context that I begin our event, packed with performances, 2 videos from the series of 5, Breaking the Taboo, special guests, and more. Together, we will watch these videos. They are a documentary that addresses some of the challenges that we are facing, as well as the support available for our community within the community. Last bit of detail before we start engaging with our guest is that I would be requesting our participants to feel free and add questions or comments in the chat, messaging either myself or you can message the technical staff with the name of Conan and Shifa. You may notice on the slides earlier that, and we'll also be seeing those slides throughout the program and the presentation, the many ways you can contact Ansar. You can message us in the chat, and rest assured that those chats are confidential. Nobody else is seeing that other than myself or that technical lead that I have just referenced to. We will keep your questions and reflections confidential, and we will address them time permitting. If you leave us your contact information and there's a question that we have not reached to, we will reach out to you if we have your contact information. Last technical detail is that our program is being recorded. And if you're not comfortable to attend, you can always log off and connect through Facebook page live. The link is on Ansar Foundation Facebook page. And with that, without further ado, I will start with inviting my first guest. It's a pleasure to be introducing our first guest, our first speaker, Sister Zubaida Wahid, one of the founding members and current trustee. She is an award-winning educator, advocate, consultant, dealing with issues pertaining to women, seniors, immigrants, refugee families, and faith communities. I have a lot to learn from her. No one is more perfect to begin this event today. Welcome, Sister Zubaida. We would appreciate if you can share with the various, if you can share with us the various services that the Ansar has for our community.
Thank you, Rukshana. First of all, let me start off by greeting and welcoming the viewing audience. Bonjour, welcome, marhaba. We are so pleased that you have joined us today. Let me tell you a little bit about the Ansar Foundation. We are a non-denominational charity, which simply means that we will serve any individual who comes to us, regardless of race, color, creed, age, and or abilities. Primarily, we service all individuals, and our primary focus is poverty reduction. It is our hope that through our programs, we will empower individuals and empower their lives. When it comes to the most focused of our needs, it's a poverty reduction. The poverty reduction, to alleviate that, we have started food banks, worked with food banks, worked with shelters. We have monthly feedings, and we have a program called Adopt a Family. Please go to our site and you can become one of our helpers with the Ansar Foundation. The second thing we have realized is to increase social inclusion. The pandemic and poverty have made horrible marriage partners, isolating families and individuals. So to do that, we have opened up computer skills for elders. We have yoga classes. You can call us and we will access the services for you in any language that you need. We have the ability to do that. So again, we are here to serve you. We also noted that educational component was a very important process in our work. So we started virtual summer camps for youth. We have kids, home clubs, Steps to University, that's mentoring for university students. As the word connotes, Ansar means a helper. We want you to come and be with us, a covenant, to join us, to be part of us. I think together we can make a difference, and we shall make a difference in many ways as possible. It goes beyond the finance. It looks at skills, knowledge, experience, and it looks at time component. So with that, I will say, merci beaucoup, thank you, shukran, dankeschön, megwich.
Beautifully said. Thank you so very much. Next, I would like to introduce our featured guest. He is a bright star of our community, Walisha. He is a poet, a public speaker, philanthropist, and he is the former poet laureate of Mississauga. He's also one of the RBC's top 35 Canadian immigrant. Love his spoken words. He is a public speaker. He has given TED Talks. He has worked on voiceovers. He has also spoken in hundreds of schools. And I find that to be the most beautiful, to be a role model for our youth. Not only that, he is proud University of Toronto graduate, advocate for Bell Let's Talk, and he has helped in raising over $1 million. So one of those days, Wali, we will be engaging you for Ansar too, again. With that, further ado, please go ahead and share with our audience and ask what you would like to share.
All right. Well, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Roxana. And yeah, this is a pleasure. I'm so happy to be a part of this. And thank you for organizing and for being so great and doing all the work that you do in our community. So I want to say start. I want to start by saying salams to everybody and share a little bit about my story and then share some poetry with all of you. So one of the things that I have always wanted to discuss is my journey to Islam because it's a little different than what most people may expect. And so I figured this was a really good time to share my story. And some of you that follow me on social media may have also noticed that there was an account made a few weeks ago about mocking me as a Muslim and saying that I'm going to hell. And I figured, what a good time to talk about some of these taboo issues in our community that affect people's mental health, because I was really impacted by this. And I want to share that story, and I want to share a little bit more about my personal journey coming to Islam, and then hopefully take some questions and answers. So I'm going to try to keep it succinct. But when my parents came to Canada from Pakistan, it was I was 3 years old. It was 1997, and I remember the struggles that my parents had to go through. Being Pakistani, coming to Canada, learning how to speak English, figuring out how to take the bus routes to get to work. We didn't have a car at that time. Sharing an apartment with other family members. There was so many struggles that we went through, and these were very typical of many South Asian, many immigrant families. And as we struggled, when I went to school, especially after 9/11, a lot of Muslim kids were bullied for being Muslim. A lot of kids that were not even Muslim but had darker skin tone, that even if they were Sikh students, were bullied, and they were labeled Muslim terrorists as well. And so this narrative of mental health and youth growing up feeling disenfranchised from their religion is something that goes very deep within our community. And I was a product of that, and feeling like you've been brought up in an environment where oftentimes, this is not true for every Muslim family, but oftentimes in very conservative Muslim homes, religion becomes so institutionalized that it becomes hard to follow. It becomes hard to practice. And I mean, no disrespect for anyone that is very conservative and strict on their faith. But in the Quran, God says explicitly, He says there's no compulsion in religion. And I'm going to break that down in layman's terms. It means that there's no forcing anyone to follow their faith. There's no forcing anyone to Islam. There's no forcing anyone to go pray 5 times a day. If they feel compelled to it, if they have a relationship with Allah that calls them to do it, then they will do it. But you can't force that. And even when you do force that, and I see this with so many Muslim kids that I work with when I go and speak at schools, the ones that are forced to do it, the ones that are being told by their parents that if they don't do it, they're going to be in hellfire, and they're using scare tactics and punishment to tell them to go do it. The second that they go to university and they're away from their family, they'll never pray. That's when the hijab comes off. That's when the prayers stop. That's when the parties start. The second they get a chance to get away from that environment where they feel controlled. But it's the one that comes to faith with their own conviction and their own beliefs. That's when they are steadfast in spite of all the fitna that is around them. And in this environment where there is so much more temptation than growing up in a conservative religious state, it becomes very difficult for a lot of young kids growing up in this world. That's why there's so much mental health issues within our community, because the problems that exist are far greater than if we grew up in Pakistan, than if we grew up in Saudi Arab. When we go outside as young Muslims, we are challenged every single day to an immense degree. It reminds me of, when I read the stories of the Prophet, may peace be upon him, I'm reminded of how challenging that initial period of Islam was, and the fitna that existed within that society of Mecca, and how hard it was for those people to hold on to their faith. This is really no different than that. We're struggling in a very similar way, where we are the few, a minority group, and we are being torn by so many different pieces, by social media, by the open access to things like pornography and drinking, all things that are taboo, but that many Muslim kids are getting very consumed by. It's so accessible. It makes it so much harder. And so my journey to Islam, very openly and honestly, was not one that was very, copy and paste super perfect like some people may like to think it is. And I want to be really honest about my journey, because I think that there's something beautiful about making mistakes and then coming back to your faith with sincerity. And so, you know, a lot of people like to look at me and say, oh well, Wally, you have tattoos. I do have some tattoos. And many people like to say, oh well, you know, you're going to be punished for that. You're going to hell. Your prayers, for example, will not be accepted. Now, I'm not a scholar. I don't know the hadith, and I don't know the exact religious connotation of having tattoos. Maybe those people are correct. I definitely don't know enough about my hadith to be able to say what is correct and what is not correct in that regard. But what I do know is my intentions. What I do know is my personal relationship with Allah. What I do know is that there's people who have far worse sins than I do, far worse transgressions than I do, that still pray, that still make the time for their Lord, that still come back to their faith with utmost sincerity. And I also know that my Lord is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most merciful, the most forgiving. But what I'm told by so many people is that I will not be forgiven for this. How do you think that affects my mental health? How do you think that affects the millions of people who have made mistakes far worse than mine? How do you think that affects their mental health? As a community of Muslims, we have a very long way to go in terms of how far we need to be accepting of others, encouraging others to come to faith. You know, the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, he accepted people that were ready to kill him, that had the intention to kill him. Umar ibn Khattab was going to kill the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he ended up becoming one of his closest companions. Imagine what a sin that would be, to have the intention to kill the Prophet, to go there with your sword in your hand, ready to do it. And then he ends up becoming someone who would lay his life down for the same man. This is Islam. What are we getting caught up with? And so I really hope and I really feel that there is a long way to go and that we can make the difference. We can make a huge impact. And the work that I do in schools, I don't bring a religious message. I actually have a very secular message when I go to schools. But the important thing is representation. We don't have a lot of Muslim artists that are in the schools, that are in the community, that are in the mass media, that are making a difference and saying openly that they are Muslim. But the funny thing is, the second that I go there and I say I'm openly Muslim and I talk about my message, they're all like, oh, why do you have tattoos? You know, why do you have earrings? Why are you, not wearing a thobe and, wearing a topi? And it's like, is this what it means to be a Muslim? I mean, come on, guys. And these kids that made the account that I was telling you about earlier, they're a group of high school kids. And I found this out after. They're a group of high school kids here in Mississauga. And they're all Muslim. They're all Muslim kids. And they made this account saying that I'm going to hell and my tattoos are going to be the reason I go to hell. And, I think I'm learning that we are all tested in different ways. And for some parents, it's a difficult test to have your children growing up in this environment. But I would highly recommend that you allow them to make their own mistakes. I would highly recommend that you allow them to come to faith from their own conviction, from their own learning. So for many years, I actually moved away from Islam and I didn't know what I believed in, because I felt so constrained by the way that the community was, by the way that my own family was, my extended family was. It made me feel like I couldn't be a part of something that I had to do because people just expected it from me. It had to come from my heart, and one of the really interesting things that brought me back to Islam was my own rationale, my own critical thinking. I was at university. I was at UTM, University of Toronto, Mississauga, for 4 years. And it was philosophy class. And this is when I was still questioning things. I was like, what do I believe in? Do I believe in Islam? Is this the path that I'm going to go on? And why do I believe in it? I should have strong, firm belief. And I took philosophy class because I was really interested in really figuring out more, understanding more. And the first question that our philosophy professor asked us when we walked into the class was, raise your hand if you believe in God. And a whole bunch of people raised their hand, and I raised my hand as well. And then the second question was, raise your hand if you don't believe in God. And we had a debate. It was a very interesting class. That was the first lesson. And in that debate, there was something really interesting that came up that stuck with me. It's this idea of intelligent design. Intelligent design theory, the premise of it, is that the world is created so meticulously with such detail that it could not be sheer coincidence that it's created the way that it is. The alignment of the universe, the stars, the way that this earth has been created and formed, so that the temperature is just right for humanity to have sustenance. These are all things that require specifics to the degree. Like if it was slightly changed, then Earth would be uninhabitable by human beings. Like there's so many small details, even the anatomy of the human body. There's a million examples I could go into, but that's when I really started thinking, okay, I do believe in something, you know, and that's when I started reading the Quran with an open mind, not because, you know, the Maulvi Saab came to my house and said, okay, beta, now it's time to read the Quran. You know, it wasn't like that. It was like, okay, I want to learn, what is this now? What is God saying to me? Is God speaking to me? And when I read the Quran and I look at the scientific evidences, like how God says that the moon is a reflective light, like what nur is in Arabic, the word nur is reflective light. Now, how would this man 1400 years ago know that the moon is a reflective light? There's signs in this thing. And when you have an open mind and you actually read it with that intention, then God speaks to you differently. I was just thinking about this intelligent design theory, and I just open up the Quran and I start reading the surah, and this is what it says. It's like, wow. It's so true that when they say you take one step towards God, you crawl towards God and God comes running towards you. And I just hope that more Muslim youth take that step, and I hope that more Muslim parents are open enough to have these conversations with their children about what mistakes that they've made and how to really grow their faith with intention and conviction. It's certainly not easy growing up as a Muslim in this environment, and aside from that, you know, there's a lot of mental health issues because of discrimination that Muslims face. And so I'd like to open it up to a spoken word poem and then take some questions. Roxana, I don't know if you have any questions for me. I see you nodding your head quite a bit, so hopefully you do. But I'll share a spoken word poem that I've written about Islamophobia that I really find powerful. It's based on called Home. Bismillah. When I came to Canada with my mom in '97, my mom told me that North America was the land of freedom, of opportunity and multiculturalism. She always told me that we were home. But lately it's been starting to feel less like home, more like isolation and feeling alone, because things that I hear have me chilled to the bone. We're still fighting discrimination based on religion and skin tone, because even years after segregation and the indigenous Holocaust, all I see is people walking over people. Guns are cocking over people, people talking over people, trying to drown out their voices. But I hear them loud and clear, and I see them because they're here. The melting pot of North America runs on fear, because here, people are more concerned with celebrity gossip and living urban, that cultural awareness is just a burden. Wake up, meet real people, and start learning, because people that fear Muslims avoid Sikh people wearing turbans. And that's not even something that Muslims wear. And to that point, there's something else that I'd like to share. The Muslims that brought down the Twin Towers, they brought our people nothing but shame. Why would terrorism be something that God would ever proclaim? Now they look at me and they think I'm one and the same. I think they're ignorantly looking for somebody to blame. Because my mom was walking home, broad daylight in Mississauga, Ontario, walking down by Dundas in here, Ontario, when a car pulled up and threw coffee on her, threw garbage on her. No respect or honor. They drove off as she wept on a street corner, and they yelled, "Go home, you terrorist. Go home, you terrorist." Home. This is home. Home of the true north, strong and the free. This is where you can be whoever you want it to be. Home is where we embrace differences between you and me. Home is where we celebrate our diversity. Home is where your neighbors catch you. Diversity, don't you agree? So to the real terrorists, those who hurt the innocent, the children and women like my mother, those who generalize others based on misconceptions, stop with your misconceptions. Find the truth beneath the lies. And next time you want to mess around, pick on someone your own size. No. Scratch that last part, because I'm not here to fight. My mom raised me better, but I just pray that we can change our home together. Thank you so much for listening. All right, so I would love to open it up for some questions and chat, but thank you so much for listening and for having me. So I really do appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, because what you have brought to us is again yet a taboo. As a Muslim child from a Muslim home, it is very clear that we do not give, most of us do not give. I would not use a blanket statement. Most of us may not feel that the kids have a say in how they are being raised. And it is very important, as you said, for them to understand the love of God. For a prophet, again, who was thrown garbage at, to love the same woman and ask, why are you not well? That, today you're not throwing garbage. Mm-hmm. That is one aspect. And that is the Islamic aspect. People might say that, okay, because you love your prophet and, you are Muslim, that's why you love Quran. And now, you are telling everybody that you are a Muslim. Alhamdulillah, that's a great aspect of it. And I'm very happy that you are openly sharing with the students and the kids and everybody you are engaging with that aspect, to say, love him and find him on your own accord. And from me, again, I think, on this forum, I can also share things as a mom, as you shared as a child who was brought into this land, is that Allah is the judge. Adala is the only thing that Allah has kept with himself. So to me, to say you are right, you are wrong, tattoos are right, tattoos are wrong. Again, I'm not going to go into that debate. What I would like you to share with us on a bigger forum than Islam, and make yourself as part of the marginalized community. Share us a little bit more that what message you would share with, and what types of taboos would you want your work to break as a marginalized community member?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope that many people start to see that conversations about faith and religion are good conversations to have, and that if you have questions, and that if you feel like you need to analyze things deeply and ask your parents, hey, why does this happen in religion? Why is God telling us to do these certain things? Like, why can't I drink? Like there should be an open space to be able to have a conversation and debate about this. That's how kids learn. That's how many people learn. And so I feel like the old way of doing things of just traditionally telling someone you can't do this is haram. That time has passed. I think it's time to have critical debates about these things and understand why it's haram. There's a reason that something's in the Quran. So I think we need to be able to have debate and conversation about that and understand that there's a reason for everything. If God has willed it, if God has spoken it, then there should be a good enough reason for it to be wrong, right? And so I think that really helps. And I think there is sometimes a taboo around speaking to a scholar or saying something that maybe you might feel judged if you ask that question, or you might feel like people might perceive you as a bad Muslim if you're asking that question. I hope that changes, because no one's a bad Muslim for asking a question. It's a genuine question. Why is alcohol haram? Or why is sex before marriage haram? These are good questions. We should be able to ask these questions. How would we know? How would we learn? And so that's one thing that I really hope changes. And I also hope that the taboo of openly saying that you're Muslim changes, that you don't feel worried or scared that people might discriminate against you. I hope that the world will see Muslims in a different light. And as we share that we're Muslim and as we share our faith with people, one thing that people will realize is that Islam is not the religion the mass media makes it out to be. That if your character, and Ibn Arabi says something really beautiful. He says, if your character does not invite other people to faith, then change your character. And that's a beautiful thing to think about. So what are you sharing without even speaking? What are you sharing with your character to the world, to the people around you, your coworkers, your classmates? It says a lot about you and your Islam, right?
And not only Islam, I think as a good human being, if you go to the basics of humanity, the basics of the empathy that we need around us in this day and age. Banks opening an hour early for seniors, all of those ethics that we are seeing as a change in society. I think your work is very important for everybody to learn that these ethics and this empathy is essential. So we have a question from one of our viewers here talking about taboo mental health. What do you do with an adult child who feels ashamed to say that they have a mental health issue and keeps the family striving, not knowing what they do?
I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, but
So
the
question is, what would you recommend as a young adult or an older child who is not ready to accept that they have mental health issues, even though the parents see the indications there, but they hide what they do and what they feel? What can, tell us a little bit more about what is your idea? How can we be a better support for that child?
Well, it's tough. We grow up in environments where there is really high expectations of a lot of, immigrant kids, especially. You got to get 90s in school. You got to go to the best university. You got to have the, top marks in your class. There's a lot of high expectations, especially academically. And so anytime you fall short of those expectations that your parents have of you, you almost feel ashamed of anything that you do because you're going to let your parents down. And so this goes both ways. This is parents needing to be more understanding and more accepting of their kids not always being perfect, because no one's perfect. The Sahaba weren't perfect either, right? And then the kids also needing to say, okay, you know what, I need to trust my parents, and that what they give me in terms of advice may also be very sound advice. And anything that they want from me is always going to be well-intentioned because they're your parents. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. I ended up becoming a literary artist, which is something that they never thought I would do, right? But I reminded them through my work that this is something that I believe will change lives. This is something that I believe will make a difference in the world. It's something that I feel like I can become a wasila for Islam for. So please see it from my perspective. They had good intentions saying, Wali, be a lawyer, be a doctor, because they wanted me to do well and survive and have a good income. But there's bigger things to life than having a good income,
Yes,
and so.
thank you. And that's lovely. You nailed it, is give them space and give them faith and trust that you are there to assist, and hopefully they will, inshallah. And another last question, and then we will move on to the next segment, because I can spend this whole entire program with you. So do you have any plans to publish your poems?
Yes, I do. I'm working on an anthology right now of all my poems that will be combined into a book. And then I'm also working on a children's novel for kids that are between grade 6 to grade 10. And it's a story about a Muslim Pakistani boy who comes from Pakistan to Canada, and he's struggling with coming to terms with his identity, with his faith. And his grandfather is a really guiding role model to him, and he introduces Islam to him in a way that's not very very harsh on the kid. So he really embraces it, and so it's a beautiful story. I'm writing it with a very well-known author named Eric Walters, who is very, very successful. And so it's going to be a great collaboration, and I think it'll do really well in terms of the content that we're writing. So,
I look forward to that book.
Thank you.
So again, Wali, thank you very much for representing your generation, being a role model for the youth, and using your voice for those who do not have one. Your focus on issues of diversity and inclusion, leadership, bullying, bully prevention, masculinity, mental health, it's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. This means a lot. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So this takes us to our next highlight of our event. As I mentioned earlier, today's event is the launch of 2 videos. These videos are the first 2 of the series of 5, and they would tackle the mental health issue. We chose the title of the series to bring forward a topic that is impacting not just one community, but a lot of communities, a lot of people within the marginalized communities. To bring And those are not being talked about. That's the biggest problem. And that's why, we have titled them to be Breaking the Taboo. These series of videos have been produced by Buna Muhammad. I'm sure a lot of you know him. And the first video hopes to highlight the issue that is very near and dear to all our hearts, our seniors. Featured in this video is Imam Dr. Abdul Hai Patel. He is the founder and the vision behind Ansar Foundation. He's been serving the community for 50 years in Canada. He serves as a chaplain for Whitby Mental Hospital, CAMH, York Regional Police, Toronto Police, and University of Toronto. Currently, he's the director of Interfaith Relations and one of our most invaluable trustees of Ansar. Let's watch the video, and then we will come back and have a conversation with Dr. Imam Abdul Hai Patel.
Last March, actually, I was out of the country when this pandemic news broke in Canada. Although we have been hearing about it back in February when I left, but when I was to return to Canada, and I had to buy another ticket and rush back quickly. My children insisted that I come back, although I didn't want to come right away, as I had another stopover in another country. So I said, well, let me get back, and I got back here in time, which alhamdulillah, that was a good experience. But when I came and found there was a panic of buying, because people feared that there would be lockdown, curfew, or so then the grocery shelves were getting empty. And there it was announced that seniors are more vulnerable to this pandemic, this corona disease. So that was they were most concerned about among seniors. In the Ansar Foundation at our Flemington office, we had a senior program running for the past 3 years, with many 20-25 seniors coming on a weekly basis to socialize, to have some snacks, refreshments, learn computers, yoga, and so on. But suddenly we stopped because we couldn't keep follow the guidelines of public health of social distance. Isolation was the biggest problem, and that created a lot of anxieties and depression among seniors that I have talked with. And even with medical practitioners, I know that it is a growing problem still now in our second wave, that seniors has been locked. Many people had to shuffle their schedule, their work schedule, their other schedule, to look after their parents. They couldn't go and visit their parents, some of them, because they were working in an environment that they could be subject to any kind of catching COVID. What I have been helping people is to kind of comfort them in isolation. Many in isolation and anxiety goes into depression, and then it leads to suicide. And it's not among seniors only. Young people, students in university have called me because it's ruining their year of learning, basically. And in-class learning is not the same as online learning in university. But seniors are a little more resilient. I would say that they are not into so much suicidal mode, but it has gone that far that it has created a mental health crisis across the country, this COVID-19. And Muslims are not immune to this. They are not exempted. We are part of this society, part of the community. Some are not reaching out help. That's the other problem, because depression or anxiety is not easily recognized as an illness. So this is something that, in fact, my family doctor last week told me that, look, in this second wave, the level of anxiety and depression is increasing to the level, there are a lot of family breakdowns. So they asked me, says, you know, with Ansar Foundation, my involvement, says, do more programs, try to help people. But people, many don't know, many newcomers to Canada, and even those who have lived here, they don't know how to access the services. The services are available, lots of from the City of Toronto, from the provincial government, social service organizations, health care professionals, and we are lucky to be in Ontario that we have free health care for most of us as residents and citizens. So, but people don't access, they don't even want to visit the doctor. And why? Because of the stigma. The Prophet ﷺ had in his time, there was an outbreak of plague. And he said about isolation that we are now talking, the government and healthcare around the world, stay home. He advised, and even asked Bilal radiallahu anhu in his azan ad, said, tell people to pray at home, because he don't want to spread the disease. But we have to act responsibly as responsible Muslims, as responsible citizens, to follow the guidelines of public health and be safe. This is the time to make use of your ability to give sadaqah and zakat. That here there are more needy people who are working, who are well off. Suddenly they lost their income and they can't even get food. Some of them are embarrassed to even come and say that they need food. So we don't want them to go hungry. And hunger can also lead them into mental health crisis. That is, if you have the skills to help the community, come forward. But you can certainly volunteer with organizations like Ansar and others to help them reach that goal, to help people, guide the people. Another way is to make donations if you are in a position, so that people have, the organizations have the necessary funding to meet the demands of the community. Then there are a number of other ways is to more sort of look after your own health while volunteering as well. But then check on the neighbors if you can, your family, your friends, what they need, seniors in the area if you can be. So involvement in the community is also important at this time. That can bring us a lot of unexpected rewards, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you save one human being life, you have saved whole humanity. And right now we need to help people to be healthy and to live comfortably.
They could see you.
Yeah, they won't see.
That is so beautiful and empowering. Thank you very much, Imam Dr. Abdul Hai Patel. Our theme is breaking the taboo, and you spoke about it in the video. What I would like to request you is, can you elaborate on how we can break the taboo around mental health within our communities, within our families?
Well, mental health is a problem in all communities because of the stigma that we have gone on for years around the world.
Yeah.
Even where there is no health, where there's healthcare is free, still going to a doctor is a stigma, just for ordinary illness. So this taboo about not accessing help or being healthy is related to all types of illness, but particularly mental health. And people have not accessed the health or services, not even going to the doctor until it is too late. Then it takes time to recover, because mental health is not recognized as an illness. Now, I have heard of one person now a couple of years ago, and this is here in Toronto. He's been in his bedroom for 20 years, hasn't come out. Then there are mental health, as Wali Shah stated, among school children, among students. And parents don't want to hear that their child has mental health. Our trustee Sister Zubaida may be able to elaborate more later on this as an educator, that mental health is not recognized as where the taboo is. So we need to break this taboo that yes, there are different levels of mental health, as you will hear from other speakers as well, from Dr. Abdul Hamid Hatiani and others, that there are different levels that may not necessarily translate into, say, hey, craziness or imbalance and so on. So we have to really educate people that yes, there are free services available. And if people don't know, they can contact Ansar Foundation number or your local elected official office as well, so that you can get the help. The quickly the help you get. Another problem is many people don't have family doctors. When they need help for a specialist, they don't get referrals. So that's the other one, that they're hesitant to go even to a specialist and others for help. And I think this is where the taboo is, and we need to break that. Join the conversation, and let Canada more or less started this conversation in the last couple of years. And Bell Canada especially has initiated this nationwide. So we need to continue this conversation.
No, thank you so very much. And that is very true, is, we are trying to refer people. We have lined up resources that can help. So with that, again, thank you for your time. Next, I'd like to introduce the second video in the series on newcomers, immigrants. And featuring on that video is our Ansar Foundation's Director of Programming, Dr. Abdul Hamid Hatiani, a consultant on workforce development, adult education, and community development. So let's watch the video together, and then we will engage with Dr. Hatiani.
When we heard about what COVID was doing in the Far East, in parts of China and in the eastern part of the world, for us here, it was like, no, it cannot reach here. It cannot happen here. Other diseases have happened in the past and have not been so serious, or they have not been as damaging as what COVID has been lately. And so it was more of a denial at the beginning. And as time sort of elapsed, as time passed, it was then that it really sunk in, no, that this is something extremely serious, and we have to take this very, very seriously. Our lifestyles have changed, yes, but we need to keep safe. We need to stay safe, and we need to take care of each other. It's extremely important that we do take care of each other. And by not meeting with people, not intermingling with people, I believe that it is our responsibility to do that. And as Muslims, as Canadians, we have to abide by those responsibilities. It has always been challenging for immigrants when they arrive and come to Canada. And the reason I say that it has been challenging when they come to Canada is, when they come to Canada, I mean, there are a number of factors that impact their getting integrated into the system. And there are certain systemic factors, and all those different factors play a role. And COVID-19 has actually exposed, how some of these variables that impact people in their health, in their mental health, has impacted them even more with COVID. So some 30 years ago, when I arrived, I came with my education, my qualifications, my belongings, my lifelong savings, and expected that I'll be able to get a job. And time passed, time elapsed, and it became very difficult for me to get a job. Often I was told, you have the right qualifications, but sorry, you don't have the right experience. Or I was told, you are overqualified. And 30 years down the road, I find that people continue to experience similar challenges that I faced 30 years ago. And at that time I felt the same emotions of feeling stressed, feeling anxiety, feeling depressed. And those were all sort of things that I experienced at that time. And I do find that, when people come here now, many of them experience something very similar. And with COVID, when you add COVID to the equation, it makes it even worse. We have seen more people of ethnic background being impacted by COVID. We have seen increase in mental health issues amongst racialized community, and so these are things that need to be looked at closely, and they need to be addressed. When you talk of mental health, some communities look at it from an angle that it is mainly to do with being crazy, which it is not, right? And so I must stress that with more education, as time elapses, as we move, as they become more educated, they tend to understand what the various levels of mental health could be, various stresses that it could be, and we need to break those taboos. We need to break those perceptions that people have regarding mental health, that it can only happen to somebody who only reaches at that particular stage. When I came over here, there were very few services that were available. There were few services that were being recognized as issues to do with mental health. Even at the workplace, it was not being recognized as an issue that needs to really be concerned about. And so we have changed. Things have changed. There are more services available now than there were before. There are more agencies now that provide those services than there were before. And so I believe that as time goes on, and as we recognize, and as we start raising those issues, things will continue to improve moving down the road on that continuum of improvement. Ansar means the helpers. And these were the helpers during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they opened up. And they opened up to a community coming from a different town, a different place, and supported them in every aspect, in every regards. And so we are taking that example and trying to provide services to our brethren, to our community, to Canadians in every way possible. And so join us, be an Ansar, be a helper. You can join us in any way possible. You can join and help Ansar by volunteering your time, by volunteering to help even deliver some of the hampers that we have, by volunteering to conduct certain workshops if you are expert at that and if you have that type of expertise. You can donate towards the cause of Ansar, and so you can help in any shape or form that is possible, whether in cash or in kind. We are open to that. Ansar Foundation is open to that, and it's going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference both to yourself and to the community as well. It is one way of giving back.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful message. And absolutely, knowledge is power, whether it be of, what is a taboo or should be a taboo and what should not be. So thank you for that. Dr. Hatiani, I would like to ask a question. You have covered very well how Ansar Foundation can help us. But what I would like you to share with us is what resources exist for families struggling within our community or any marginalized community, and how do they access these resources?
Thank you for the question. It's important for people to recognize that there is a lot of help available out there, and people need to seek that help. Please reach out. There is 211. You can call 211 and find out about an organization or an agency close to you. You can call 311 to find out even more about services that the City of Toronto provides. And there's a lot of services that the City of Toronto provides. And again, I would like to mention that reach out to Ansar Foundation. And the way we the way we have organized ourselves is when somebody calls, there's going to be somebody who will respond to your call, or we will give you a call back. Call us at this number, 416-637-2278, 416-637-2278. And when you call us, we'll gather that information in there is utmost confidentiality, and we will get you a staff member who is experienced and knowledgeable do a triage as to what type of services would be appropriate for you. And the way we look at services is not just a confined way of helping you. We look at services holistically in a broader sense. So if there are issues to do with mental health, we will refer you to some mental health appropriate agencies that can help you. But along with that mental health issues, we know that there are other things that are also attached to it. For example, poverty. For example, not having employment. And so we have those services direct you and get you those services so that you can move forward in a holistic way rather than just focusing on one issue at a time. We look at the issue in a broader sense because all those different things impact a person's life that eventually impact mental health. So our idea is to address the issues in a holistic way, and please give us a call. Don't feel confidence. There is a lot of confidentiality that we do take care of, and we also are very conscious of that. So give us a call, and we will try and support and guide you to the right resources. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. At Ansar, we are very blessed that we have the resources available from a perspective of expertise of knowledge about our youth, about children education, about adult education and the programs. So this brings us towards the conclusion of our program today. Thank you for everybody who took out time from their important day, their things that they had to do with the family, our program guests, the staff, the board members, and trustees of Ansar Foundation. To our supporters and well-wishers, we sincerely hope that you will be able to honor us with your support and help us take projects to a new height, with your prayers, with your time, and with your donations. Ansar Foundation works year-round to help community members battling isolation, homelessness, poverty, and other social issues. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you require assistance, any additional information, any resources that might be able to make it easier to go through the life today. Foundation is going on ongoing projects. You can visit our website and learn about that. And also, I would like to thank the Government of Canada and Toronto Foundation for being our supporter and making these events and efforts and videos possible. With that, I thank you all and bid farewell to all of you. Thank you very much.